He's Tass. It's the Metzger Tassoul Show.
Tass.
There we go. Happy Thursday.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Just got off
He used to unmute me after the
sharing everywhere.
I don't know what you call that intro. But now maybe Perry did that. Maybe you're just not unmuting me and I have to do it myself manually now.
No, Perry did it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Perry did it. Anyway, are you in your school?
Yeah.
Wow.
How about that?
Fantastic.
How about that?
Look at that.
There you go. A little back to school supply drive going on out there.
Nice.
Unlike you guys, we didn't start school 2 days ago or whatever that was. We
started school today.
Today it started. Okay. Yeah.
So Kylie just started high school, buddy.
Oh, baby. She's at the bottom of the pile now. She's the freshman.
I can't wait to hear how it all went today.
Right? I'm sure it'll be good.
School starts, they got to be there at 7:12 in the morning.
And what time do they finish?
2:20.
2:20. Interesting. And what about Addie? What time does she done with school?
She starts at 8:40 and she finishes at 3.
Interesting. And remind me, what time do classes start by you guys for your schools?
Depends on the school. I believe our Eagle Creek school starts at 3:30.
Okay. Is that
3:30? I think 3:30 is the earliest class. I think. Yeah. So, but anyway, I got up at 6 a.m. Kylie set her alarm for 5 a.m. She left the house. Tim picked her up at 6:25. And I was up at 6 to, of course, get the pictures and do all that stuff with Di. You know.
Nice.
Anyway, pitch blackout, crickets chirping. I don't know how healthy that is.
You didn't drive her in for her first day and blare some obnoxious song?
I drove Addie in, my 4th grader.
Okay. Right.
Hey, you know Addie.
Yes, I do.
I drove her to school today. And we played, I played something good. Neil Diamond.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
When I used to drop Phoenix off at high school, freshman and sophomore year, till she had her driver's license, he'd pull right up to the front, and I'd put the window down. Love you! Be yelling out the window. She's like, Dad, stop embarrassing me. Yeah, that was a good old time.
Well, what I did, because of the technology of Tesla, is the last couple of weeks of middle school, I rolled the windows down, and when Kylie got out, I'd hit the remote fart machine in the Tesla over the speakers as she was getting out. It just helped her move faster.
Oh my God.
As the teachers are standing right there. I mean, they know what's going on, but middle schoolers don't think that's cool.
No. But we do.
Anyway.
But we do.
Well, yeah, it's the coolest thing ever. So anyway, Tass, topic today. How to
topic. What is it?
How to find or create or have great staff.
How to make it easier.
How to make it, let me be clear. How to make it easier to find great staff. I'm going to give some golden nuggets in here for anybody that's interested.
Either they're going to be nuggets or pro tips.
I don't know. I don't know what lingo I'm going to use today. Oh,
you're not frozen.
Black saying I'm frozen.
And you are.
I'm frozen. Can they hear me?
You're not.
Can you hear me, Mr. Blackman?
You're not frozen, my end.
Okay. All right. Guys, I just need to know before I give the pro tips. You can hear me, but I'm frozen.
There you go.
Hold on. Let's just refresh. The narcolepsy's kicking in again.
Oh my goodness.
Hold on.
Funny. Hey everybody, Mr. Costa, Mr. Walls, Mr. Blackman, Miss Ramos, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Lockett.
Am I good?
I think so.
Am I good? Okay, I'm unfrozen. Okay, not frozen in Austin. Very good. All right, fantastic. All right, so let's talk about some staff making it easier to find great staff. There's two ways to find help, right? Great help. And listen, if you are watching this and you are not an owner, it's time to sign off now. I'm only kidding. It doesn't matter, because ownership, right? Being an owner, and I say this all the time, it's just a title, but an owner by themselves cannot reach the pinnacle of success. But an employee by themselves, without the support of an owner or a manager, cannot reach the pinnacle of success. We first have to understand that it is a team effort if we want to maximize success, okay? So when I talk about how to make it easier to find a great team, you might be an instructor that works for somebody, but even you want to make it your job easier, right? And you got to grow the school and help be part of that. And how do you grow future instructors, assistants to help you? If you're an owner, how do you find a great instructor, program director, manager, assistant instructor, whatever? Okay. There's two ways, obviously. Simple. Internal, you find staff from internally, right? And externally. Let's talk about internally. Here it is, and then Tass, you can elaborate on this as far as experiences of not doing this, to starting to do this, to the cons of not. And because I could talk about, I never did this purposely back in the day, but that is, number one, you got to ask yourself, when do you start looking for great team members? When you need them, or all the time? That's number one. When do you start looking? The answer should be, we're looking all the time. Number one. When do you start looking internally and grooming for staff members? A, do you start looking when you have a student that looks really sharp and you walk up to him and say, hey, would you want a job to help out in classes? Or do you start grooming them because you have a leadership program for advanced students to get them into a program to learn how to be a great leader, a great assistant, a great help in your company? Not just on the floor, but a leadership program. The answer should be, you should have a leadership program for students to be part of if they are interested in learning leadership skills and how to become a future instructor. Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you, and then I'm throwing it to you, Tass, is this. One of the things that is hugely important, I feel, is when you have students, I don't care if they're an adult, and for some of you, I don't care if it's a 10-year-old that started with you when they were 3, and they're getting ready to go for black belt. Okay. When students are going through black belt prep class, okay, when they are going to black belt, when they start training for black belt, you should have a meeting with all of these kids as far as the expectations of the testing for black belt, what it means to be a black belt, and how they need to represent your school once they become a black belt, but also how that black belt is going to open up career opportunities for them. And what we do is we show them, and if it's a child, the parents are present at this meeting, we want to let you know this is a career path that some people choose to have. Now, in our company, and not everybody is there, you could make 6 figures in our company as a staff or a team member, right? Most people have no idea that this could be a real viable career. But when it's a child and they're going for black belt, we tell the parents, look, it's, a lot of the kids, when they hit high school and they hit 15 and 16, a lot of you parents are going to want them to get a job. When your child's a black belt, that opens the door for them to make a living here teaching other people how to do martial arts, better their lives, help other people in the community by becoming an instructor or an assistant instructor. and it's just another option for them. What that also does is when the 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old gets their black belt, a lot of people, we could do a seminar on this, a lot of them quit. They got their black belt, they're going to take a break. When you lay out a plan and you let the parents know that, hey, when they're 14 or 15, if they're still training and now that they're a black belt, they have the opportunity to become an instructor and work through high school, but here in the martial arts school, right? It helps with retaining people as well. So it is very important that you pave the way and pre-frame to all of your students that are going for black belt, adults and kids alike, that there may be part-time positions available, full-time positions available, and potentially for some of you, a career opportunity available. That's internally. Go ahead, Tass.
So, I think, yeah, if we talk about internal for a second, right, which I won't say is the easiest, but I think some people, I think most people would argue that they would prefer to hire internally because people don't have maybe preconceived notions, I'll call it baggage, bad habits. They came from somewhere else, right? And sometimes that can be difficult to change. By the way, we've seen phenomenal employees that have come in from the outside that have never been a part of the company because sometimes they don't have any bad habits to break either. So it goes both ways. But I think everybody prefers internally because they've been around your culture, they understand your culture, they know what it is, and seemingly can be easier to potentially get people trained in because they've seen all the systems kind of unfold throughout the course of the years. Now, here's the thing. You say it's, the best time to be looking for somebody is when you don't need somebody, right? The worst time to look for an instructor is when you need somebody. And I think that needs to set in. But why would you not look for somebody when right now? Let me reshape that, right? Why would you look for somebody if you don't need somebody? Because I think part of the response basically is this: well, geez, I don't want somebody to apply for a job and then me tell them no. I mean, we say that we're hiring. Well, how do I do that? And what happens if I get somebody in, they're just like average? I think you all have to remember, right? You're ultimately in control. So just because you're hiring doesn't mean you have to hire every single person that comes in. But what it does allow you to do is it allows you to sift and sort and be able to go through people. And when you find someone that could really be a great fit and potentially be a great asset to your business, boy, that's a great person to have, and you'll find a spot for that person. Additionally, right, you may, if you go through, as an example, right, you go through maybe some interviews, and maybe what you do at the end of the interview is you go on their application, you rate them, whether they are A, B, C, D, whatever it is. And maybe you take notes on those people. Well, if you ever do get in a pinch, what you could do is you could go to your Rolodex of applications that you have, pull those people out and say, hey, look, I know you applied at the time. At the time, we didn't have an opportunity. We have an opportunity now. And be able to at least maybe get somebody in, if you can, and maybe able to work with them, right? If you're in a pinch and had to absolutely do that, right? So there is a reason why you want to be looking for people all the time. And, on the flip side is, as you're talking about some of this stuff, it reminds me a lot of our referral programs, right? People's referral programs. The reason referral programs don't work is because nobody knows about it, right? And I think in our industry, we can make the excuse. The reason people don't want a career in martial arts is because they don't think there's any money there. 20 years ago, I think you could say that. I think you still make the argument today, but I will say that the successful schools, there are opportunities there for a career, not a job, a career. So it's up to us to make sure that we're constantly reframing and showcasing and planting seeds all the time, because it's interesting, Metz, right? And I love the idea, and you've shared this with me before, about at black belt testing. That's a pre-frame. That's planting seeds, because for some of you and for some of your students, the majority probably never even thought about having a job or a career in martial arts. And by the way, a lot of people, it's going to start as a job, right? If they're a teenager, it's going to start as a job. Would they rather work at the local fast food restaurant, or would they rather work at the martial arts school, right? Well, I'm thinking a lot of them would rather work at the martial arts school because it's something that they love to do and would love to do that. But if they don't know that that's an opportunity, that can be a challenge. Now, here's a question for you, Metz. So now let's just say people hear this and they're like, you know what? And I want to touch on leadership program for a second, and maybe I'll hit that first. So leadership program. So some people get caught in the weeds with the leadership program. What do I do? What do I teach? How much do I charge? Do I charge? Don't I charge? The answer is it really depends, right? And I think it depends on if you don't have any sort of a leadership team right now, and you're really not sure what you're going to like present as a quote unquote curriculum, and you're not sure what you're going to do, and there may not be a ton of value because you're not sure what that looks like for you yet, but you do know that you want to start to cultivate leaders. Number one, you got to find a program, right? You got to, or make your program. And that's basically going through what do you do on a daily basis on the mat, right? As an example, and potentially even in the office, and write those things down, track them. So you have things that you can be able to teach and that you can be able to deliver. A leadership program, old school days was you would charge for a leadership program and you would require your students to come in that were in leadership, and you would require them to teach. And quite frankly, people would require them to teach as many possible classes as they could get them there. That's misuse of a leadership program. I'm just going to call that out, right? That there's child labor laws in place for that stuff too. The difference would be in a leadership program, if you charge for a leadership program and you have a curriculum that you're teaching, and you're teaching them how to be a leader, not only in the martial arts school, but whether they're at school, any other sport, activity, any future job or endeavor that they go into, there's substance and there's value, and there's a reason to be able to pay for that, right? Because you're providing great value. On the teaching side of things, we only allow our students to teach up to, and I say teach, assist, be leaders in 2 classes per week. That is it. They cannot do any more than that because we don't want it to be abused, and we don't want to abuse them, right? So very important. Do you charge?
You froze. Oh, there you go.
Do you charge? Don't you charge? It's totally up to you. But if you've never done a leadership program before, my suggestion is don't charge. Get a group of whatever, 8, 10, 12, 15 people, bring them in, grandfather them in, and start to develop your program and start to develop your leaders. Because now I also know there's mental blocks that get put in place, right? Like, well, I want to charge for it, but I don't know what to charge. I'm not sure I'm going to do. Forget all that. Just tonight in classes, let everyone know you're starting a leadership program. It's going to meet on this day, this time, and these are the people that you're inviting, and there's no charge for that. Because if there's no charge, right, some of you say, well, if it's free, there's no value. That can be true, but there's lots of things that are free that have value, right? But you have to be able to provide it. So I think you just need to we as an industry need to get focused on, if you want to cultivate leaders, right, you have to start with a leadership program and start early to turn those people into instructors. So here's my question for you, Metz. When you look at, and you're making these announcements, right? Black belt testing, you're making announcements in classes about, just talking about this idea of having a job. In our state, in Wisconsin, you have to be 14 years old, right? 14 years old or older to have a worker's permit and be able to, to work. Same rules apply. You have 7 people that come to you and say, hey, we'd like to have a job. We'd like to try this out. How do you make sure, because there is a such thing as overstaffing your school as well, right? So walk us through that in the internal side of things as far as looking for people. Am I frozen?
No, I was frozen. I think I'm okay now.
Okay. Did you hear my question?
Walk us through, what was the last part?
So let's just say somebody takes our advice and they go and they start talking about, hey, we have opportunities, da-da-da. And maybe they've got a big group of teens, right? Black belt teens. Well, if 7 people are interested, are you hiring all 7 people? Or how do you go through that process, and what do you do?
So listen, here's the thing. First of all, you got to set up an interview process, right? And if you have like a group of people that are interested in working, one of the things that I try to teach clients is you don't necessarily, in a perfect world, okay, you don't want somebody like this person's there on Monday. I'm talking paid people. I'm not talking leadership helpers. I'm talking paid people. This person works Monday. This person works Tuesday. This person works Wednesday. That is not a formula for long-term success. Those are Band-Aids. And all you're doing is you're kind of hiring for convenience when you do that, because you have somebody helping you in the class. What I would like to do is first and foremost say, look, I'm looking for somebody that potentially can work 15 hours a week, let's say 3 hours Monday through Friday. That's consistent. That is consistent, number one. So when my customers and students come to class, there's a familiarity with these people. They know who's there. There's a rapport going on with these people. Oh, Johnny, hey, did you work on that stuff from Monday's class? If it's on Wednesday, I know what's going on. So that's first and foremost. So if I have a group of teens, the first thing I'm going to say is, well, look, who would be eligible to work 15, 18 hours a week? Well, that's going to whittle it down a little bit, right? Now, let's say nobody's able to work that much. Okay. Can I take the 18 hours a week and who can work 9 hours? Because now I want 2 people that can do 9 hours where there's just consistency, but it's between 2 people. And then I'm gonna hire the best fit, right? Right now, it might be the highest rank. It might be the person who got their application in first, whatever it is. And then I will tell everybody else, look, you guys are still, in the running, but right now I just don't have enough room to hire everybody, but I'm still keeping you in mind for sure. So that's how I would handle that, right? I want consistency. Let me just back up and remind everybody on how it's easier to find a great staff internally. It's easier to find a great team internally when you start from the pre-black belt phase. I mean, it makes things easier. It's a longer play. It's not that you're going to hire them right now, maybe, right? Number one. And the other thing that makes it easier is I want to go back to what you said on the leadership class. The leadership deal, if you want something super, super simple, have a leadership class on a Friday, okay? And go over with your leadership group what the beginners are going to be doing next week, what the intermediates are going to be working on next week, what the advanced students are going to be working on next week. And depending on the rank of the leadership students, we're going to review that with them to let them know what we're going to be going over next week so they're familiar with it. So when they do go to the schedule, like Taz said, and what we used to do back in the day when we didn't have a real structured leadership program, we had a blank class schedule on the wall. And after leadership, the students would go and put their name next to 2 classes that they're going to help in next week. Max, because I did not want, here's what will happen if you don't do that. You'll get like all 8 students to sign up on the class right before their class. So they can assist in that class and then just take their class. And then you have 8 assistants in a class that has 10 people in it. And it's just a mess, right? So they put their initials next to 2 classes. Once there's 2 names next to that class, no one else can sign up to help in that class. But this is also going to make sure that you have more help in more classes. The other thing that you do in a unstructured leadership program, because we have a very detailed leadership program now, very detailed, but I'm just trying to make this simple for you. Teach them how to greet people when they walk in the door. Teach them how to greet parents. Teach them how to make announcements, okay? Teach them how to spotlight and highlight kids in class along with what we're doing for curriculum. Of course, teach them how to keep a class organized, fun, and high energy during warm-up so they can warm up a class, especially if you're a one-man or one-woman show. So these are just simple ways that you can do a leadership. And by the way, that class can be 1 hour a week on a Friday. And yes, you should charge. You should charge for that, because if you do not charge for that, you're going to have inconsistency. Some people are going to show up, then they're not going to make it next week or the next week. You're not going to know who's there. This is serious. You nominate, you tell the parents, I want to nominate your child for this leadership program. I think they'd be great, but I want to show you how serious it is, the commitment level and the cost for the program. And it should be some type of term, because your leadership students, the other thing that you could do with them is make sure that they practice a demonstration as a leadership team. So at graduations, at special events, at mass intros, your leadership team comes and they perform a demonstration as well. But if you have people that are missing class, this, that, and the other, you can't structure a team demo of sorts to have the group staying together. So you should charge for this, and you should have a term commitment, a commitment to the program. And ours is 1 year. Ours is a year commitment.
Right. Yeah, and I think and I had mentioned earlier about charge or not charge, right? Like if you weren't going to charge, right, you need to put a value on. So $399 value. This is what we're doing for the first group of people going through right now. We're going to take. By the way, there's a difference between, and I'll say this, right? There's a difference between free versus I'm going to pay it for you, right? Because that also provides more value. So but he's going through a structured curriculum right now, and yeah, you absolutely should charge for that if you're going to do that. Now, the other thing is you threw a lot at everybody, and you're giving ideas, but that's not something you're not going to teach all of those things in one Friday night, right? You spread those things out, right? You're not teaching them how to teach an entire class either. You're teaching them how to teach a segment of a class, right? Whether that's, you said it, the warm up, or maybe they're going to do the drill section, or maybe and maybe leadership, students that have been there for a very short time, they're just first learning how to, like you said, greet people and know how to do the warm up. Then after they've been there for a while, they're going to teach the actual drill format. Then you have some people that are going to be able to teach the word of the month. I mean, different things that you can do, and you can piecemeal it together, but you should write out your lesson plan for a year. If in this case, 12 months, 6, whatever you plan on doing, and then have that be a rotating curriculum, just like everything else that you do, right? But every week there's a plan, and you follow the plan, you go through it, and this can really help to cultivate, and it can really help to change the culture in your school. Because when you have those people and they're greeting people, and you see other parents see these kids, these leadership kids that are walking up and say, maybe they come to attention, they bow and say, "Hey, Mr. Smith, how are you today? Good to see you. Thank you so much for coming to class. How's Johnny been?" Like, this kid's 14 and they're asking me these questions. I want my kid to be like that. It can help on the retention side as well, because they're seeing in action what your program is doing for other kids, right? Not just a chief instructor that's whatever, 20 to 50 years old or whatever it may be in the front, but that these other kids have these leadership skills and leadership ability. It reminds me of Team Paul Mitchell, right? How disciplined and respectful those kids are. They're high-flying kids, but there's a culture with Team Paul Mitchell where these kids, you meet them, how respectful they are. That's what you want. If I was to think about a culture of my leadership team, like Team Paul Mitchell comes to my mind as far as that's what I would want to emulate in my school with my leadership team and who my kids are. And I say kids, but kids, adults, whoever it may be. So there's a couple questions here, Metz. Do you hire ranks that are, I think that's what he means.
We hire lower belts that are lower than black belts.
That are black belts.
If you need help now, you absolutely do. And those higher ranks can help in only the lower ranked classes is kind of what we've done, right? If you're an advanced student, you can assist in the beginner intermediate classes, for example.
Right. And by the way, let me say something that you always talk about, right? Is most times, please don't misconstrue this, but most times, one of the first people that you hire in your school is a program director. Now, we're talking about leadership in younger people right now, but to answer that question directly is a program director does not have to be any belt rank in your school, right? It could be a raving mom of your students in class, if that's a good fit, right? If that happens to be a good fit. So I just want to be clear about that as well. That's more of a program director career opportunity. They do not have to be any belt at all, right? But on the floor, yeah, I mean, if you need help, and like Matt said, if they're an advanced student, they're not coming in and teach and helping the advanced classes. They're helping with intermediates and beginners and your little dragons or tiny tigers or whatever you may call those people, right?
And then the other part,
yep.
Yeah, no, the other thing is you start teaching business systems to leadership program. So listen, this is another very great question. Everybody can teach business systems. I'm not going to jump to what we have. I think we have a very intricate, very high level, detailed process and program. So I'm talking to the majority here. Business systems could be this. The answer is yes, but I want to make sure you understand what business systems are and why. Again, if all you do is teach people how to hold a pad and count to 10, I'm making that up. That is convenience for you. That is a convenience factor. It's not an investment in your company. It's convenience for you, right? Meaning,
nope, we may have lost him.
But if you also teach Sarah, listen, here's how you answer a phone properly. Here's how you set an appointment. Yeah.
Back up like 20 seconds because you cut out there first. And I wasn't know if it was just for me or for everybody.
I don't know what's going on.
Not,
We can't afford good internet.
You're not hiring for convenience, right? If they
You're hiring for an investment.
Right. And then you started going through an example and you cut out for a second.
You're hiring for an investment. So for example, if you hire Sarah to go out on the mat, warm up a class so you could just get a breather and take a break, that's convenience. But if you hire Sarah and she can warm up a class, but she also knows how to answer a phone properly, if she knows how to set an appointment for somebody, if she knows how to greet a new prospect that walks in the door to set an appointment to come in and try a class, that's an investment in your company with Sarah. So yes, they should learn at least basic business systems, but that's also leadership skills. When you have a 15-year-old that the parents see greets an adult walking in the door and shows confidence and can answer a phone and set an appointment, that's a big deal. And yes, that should be part of your program. Okay. I hope that I keep looking at my phone too to see if I'm freezing and all that stuff. But anyway, but yes, you should.
Can you see me or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are some things, we've got 4 steps of selling, 4-step. Some of these things are not appropriate, right? But there are things that are on here, right? 4 steps to being successful as an example. So there's a lot of different things. And guys, you guys all have the information. It's about putting the information together and what you want the culture of your school to be and feel like as well. I think that's important, right? So that's more on the leadership side of things, Mets. What about paid staff? What would be an ideal? Give us maybe a school of, you pick the numbers, 100, maybe 250, and about 400 students, right? What's a good ratio, and how do I know, and how do I determine how many full-timers do I have? Maybe I don't have the opportunity to have full-time right now. I've got a bunch of teens, but what would be the right amount of staff? Is there a formula for that, or how do I figure that out?
If you have good trained people, you can run a 200-person school up to 200 people with 2.5 people, a full-time program director or office person, a full-time instructor, and a part-time assistant instructor. But again, that assistant instructor is consistent, who is there all the time when the parents come in. The parents don't know if that instructor got in at 10 a.m. or got in a half an hour before that first class starts. All the customer knows is this is the team, right? And that's how we build. So 2.5 people. Then you can add another half person as you get bigger, or another full-time position as the school continues to grow. The other thing that I want to tell you though is to make it easy on the external, because we were talking about internal. On the external hiring, you should, and I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but not really. You should be looking for your next hire as aggressively as you're looking for your next student. That means you should be marketing all the time, because Shane said it earlier. Just because you have resumes coming in doesn't mean you have to hire anyone. But it is so good to find good people, especially from the outside, that it could take you 6 months to a year to find somebody good. That's why you cannot wait till you need someone. And if you don't need someone today, but you happen to find somebody that, man, they would be great, you hire them. You find a way to hire them and get them in. But again, you're doing it for an investment in your company, which should, if they're that good, should help you elevate. And the last point I want to make is, if you're a one-man or one-woman show, if you own a martial arts school, I'm assuming you are a martial artist. Don't be looking for an assistant instructor first. Look for a part-time office person first. You got the floor. That's your expertise. That's what you do. Get someone in the office that's organized, presentable, charismatic, friendly, that can answer phones, talk to people when they come in, set appointments, enroll people, upgrade people, renew people, help with marketing. Get that person in place while you got the floor. That would be your first hire if you're a one-man or one-woman show.
Yeah, and part of the reason behind that, team, is that's what your expertise is. That's what he said, right? So, for example, if you did it backwards and you hired an instructor first, not saying you can't do this, but if you hired an instructor first, I'm going to make the assumption that that instructor is not going to be as good as you, right? So what is your product? Well, your product is what you're doing on the floor. So if you put somebody that's just okay on the floor, so you can go in the office and enroll somebody new, right? You're going to enroll that person. They're going to go on the floor, and the experience they're going to have is not the same experience as if the instructor was. So we always talk about what's the best way to retain students and keep students, right? Well, the answer is it's always been teach great classes, right? That will never change. But you have to determine what is a great class. I'm not saying that there are instructors other than the owner that can't teach great classes. I'm not saying that at all. But this is why it's much easier. We hear this all the time, right, from clients. Well, I don't have a staff, so I can't. So when I have to put people into a group intro, then I have to reschedule them for a time to come in order to talk to them about enrolling because I can't get off the floor. I don't even have an assistant to help me off the floor. That is why you put somebody in the office to relieve you of that, and that will help pay for that person immediately. Imagine what would happen if currently you're bringing an introductory lesson in and you have to do a group intro. In other words, you bring an 8-year-old, I'm using an example of a kid's school. You have an 8-year-old come in and try out the beginner class. But you can't talk with that parent about them enrolling because you don't have time, you don't have somebody else to take the class. So now I went through the class with them on Wednesday. Miss Smith, can I get you guys in, come in on Saturday? I just don't have any time with classes going on, but I'd love to sit down with you, talk to you a little bit more about the program. Does Saturday work for you guys? Well, immediately it's a lesser convenience to the parent. They may not show back up. The emotion and energy that's happened at that lesson has started to dwindle in the next couple of days. But imagine if you had somebody come in and they came right off the floor, came in the office, and you had all those things going for you, and you need a little bit of training and just show them how to enroll. We say this, and I want to make sure you guys understand it, right? Like, the sale doesn't happen in the office. Some of us have this idea, and I think it's a bad idea to look for salespeople as program directors, because salespeople tend to really want to overcome objections in a very salesy type way, right? And they can strong arm and hard close and just look to get the deal done, right? I know, because I was in the health club industry, and it was cutthroat sales, right? Car sales is very similar to that, right? And not everybody is like that in those industries, but as a whole, that's what a sales job is. In our industry, if we're doing our job correctly, the sale happens on the floor, on the experience that they're having on the floor. And because they love it so much, and they're like, my God, this is amazing. What do I need to do to get started? That's what should be happening. If that's not happening, you need to reassess your floor to determine what's going on, why people aren't getting started. This is also the reason why I will encourage some schools to only start with trials, because they just are not strong enough in building rapport in a 15 to 30-minute interaction to get somebody enrolled in the program. It's also why a lot of you guys do month-to-month programs, because it's just easier, and like, hey, if you don't like it, you can cancel, no problem. It's just an easy pitch, it's an easy close, right? But if I can deliver a great product on the floor, they're looking for a way to just get started, and it's much, much easier in the office, and there's very few objections that you have to overcome because they're excited, they're enthusiastic, and there's that emotional, attachment that they have to what you're doing. So there is a time and a place for doing trials, and for those of you that maybe experience a low closing rate or enrollment rate, we'll call it, right? You may want to shift gears, and for 30 to 60 days, just bring people in on a trial. And I would suggest, when I say that, I'm not talking a 3-lesson trial or 2-lesson trial or a 1-class trial. I'm talking a 4-week trial. So it gives them time to experience your program. And then, because they've had the experience on the floor, now the know, like, and trust factor starts to rise because they've had interaction with you over 2 weeks. It can be much easier to get them to enroll. But again, there's a right way to do that. There's a system and there's a process to make all that work as well.
That's it. And you guys got to understand, don't limit yourselves. You should be in business to try to impact as many lives as possible, to try to make as much revenue as possible for you, your teammates, your future teammates, your family. I mean, you should, right? With integrity and with great service and with great quality martial arts instruction. Go above and beyond, deliver what your customer and your community want, and needs, and sky's the limit. Do not limit yourself. However, it is impossible to do it by yourself. It is impossible. Okay. So hopefully you got some insight. I think if I was sitting here listening to this, the biggest golden nugget, which is a long play, is pre-framing my future black belts on a career opportunity with me, getting my leadership program going, and having some sort of structure to it. Because if you can hire within, it's always better. Just because they know your culture, they know the art, they know your personality, they know the feel of your school. Coming in from the outside, typically it's always a little tougher adjustment, typically, but not always. And it also depends on how well you have training systems in place. If you go to work at Publix here to be a bagger, to bag groceries, you got to watch hours of videos first and go through training just to learn how to bag groceries. Most of you throw instructors out on the floor with zero training to teach people how to defend themselves or martial arts. I mean, you have to have strong systems. However, I'm not naive to think that our industry, the majority of our industry, has that. So I wanted to try to make this as simple as possible just to get your foot in the door on creating help for you and a leadership program that's just simple to start, right? Just start now.
Right.
And by the way, you may even want to limit your leadership program, right? It's first come, first serve. That's a call to action. I'm only taking 12 kids. That's it. And then there's a waiting list. It's going to be $699 for the year, or $999 or $299, whatever you want. It's once a week. This is the stuff they're going to be learning. These are the expectations. And by the way, they should have a special uniform top or a patch or something to show that they are leadership students. And I'm telling you, you'll start growing. You'll start growing.
Now they're going to say, well, do they wear that for every class or just a class that they teach? Like, you guys, sometimes we just overthink things, right? But that's a way, by the way, the different uniform color top, right? That's a way to showcase the program, right? And differentiate those people. So, you made a comment earlier about, looking for staff as much as you look for a new student, right? The concept. It's interesting. Sometimes when you lose a key person, it's immediate how fast you can fill the position. It's like, what do they call that? It's going to be on the top of my mind. I'm not going to remember it right now. You go and you buy a new vehicle. The reticular activation system is what it's called. You go and you buy a new vehicle. Fancy. And then all of a sudden you see that vehicle everywhere, right? It's the same thing that happens. Like when you put on the different lens, right? And you're looking for good people, you can find them. Like, you're like, man, this person's been there the whole time. I just never really chose to look at that person that way. And now I've asked them and they come up. We've had that happen with us in the past, which is why I know that happens, right? And by the way, that's sometimes rolling the dice, right? Because what can happen is you're looking and you may find somebody that may be for convenience, right? And not as an investment. So you got to be careful with that as well. But I think, there's a lot of great comments, a lot of great ideas on here. It is important for you guys to look at these things and determine, what do you want to do? What do you want your school to be like? What do you want it to feel like? What do you teach in your? There's a difference between telling and teaching, right? You have to remember that as well. It's not okay for you to say, hey, can you jump on the floor and go do a warm up? Okay, yes, sir. And some of you will say, we've been doing this. Metzger can perform. I can do the same thing. The warm up that I did when I was a kid doing taekwondo for the first 10 years I did taekwondo was the same warm up every single class. If that's you, they may be able to perform it, right? But they may not be able to lead it. I've seen this happen when we do our student creed, right? They've been doing the student creed for years, and then you ask them to lead the student creed, and then they get lost, because there's the pressure, there's not the preparedness. Be mindful to teach. Yes, you have to role play. You've got to go through things. You've got to put them in an environment where you can teach them, and then they can feed it back to you, so that you know that they're prepared for class. Because confidence is confidence comes from competence. If they're not competent in what they're doing, they're going to look like a train wreck in front of everybody else when they're doing class. So you have to teach them. We see this happen with owners as well. I need you to make 25 lead calls today. But they don't do it with them. They don't show them how. They don't go through the 4 steps of selling. They don't do any of those things. They just say make the lead calls. And then when they're not successful doing the lead calls, or they don't make them, well, why didn't you make them? Why? Because they weren't trained, or they weren't trained properly. They don't know what to do, or they don't feel confident with those things. So sometimes we have to remember we said this a while back. You showed me this one. When you point the finger, there's 3 pointing back at you. Sometimes it's you that hasn't taken the time to train your people. Now, there's times that we do train our people and they need to take the responsibility and take action. But oftentimes we see it's more about telling than teaching. And so I would encourage everybody just to kind of step back a little bit and say, what can I do to set them up for success and to make sure that they can do this and they can perform it and look like a rock star? I always say this to our students. Guys, listen, your job as students is to make me look amazing. That's your job, right? My job as your instructor is to make you guys look amazing. It's a two-way street. And when we think that way, right, now I'm thinking, what can I do to help these guys look amazing? I remember back in the day when we used to do forums. Well, if we did forums for a demonstration, unless it was our demo team, as a whole, the big patterns and all the big forms, the big turns and all the things, that never looked as good when they did it together as a group as it did if I counted out the numbers, right? So I would set them up for success and I would count the numbers, and then they look really sharp and they stay together as a group. Not that it looked bad the other way, it just looked better when we did it by the numbers. This is how you need to think about your leadership team, your from your students all the way up. Your students, your leadership team, your assistants, your chief instructor, your senior program, all your team. How can you set them up for success and make them look amazing? And that also comes down to when you have a parent or you have someone that comes in the office and they may talk negatively about an experience with one of your students, team members, whoever it may be, you can't throw him under the bus. Yeah, I know. We've been working on that with him, and I know he just doesn't have it. You can't do that. You're their team member. And if someone came to them, you'd want them to back you. You've got to back them just like they would back you. And that's what creates a great culture, in your school and in your business.
What age are you starting them in the program? Do you wait until they can legally work? No. If there's an advanced student and they want to be in the leadership program, to assist in 2 classes a week, just as a volunteer to assist, to get that experience, by the time they are legally able to work, where I can bring them on payroll and bring them on for 10 to 15 to 18 hours a week, they're that much better. So no, there's no reason why even a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old can't start learning leadership skills and boosting confidence by getting up in front of a class, warming up a class, but with proper training. So no, Mr. Wells, you could get them in there, early. So there it is, everybody. A little bit on. And by the way, I said easier, but nothing's easy when it comes to finding great people. There's work involved. This is the problem with every industry, I think, right? But in the martial arts industry, why is it that few schools really skyrocket in their businesses? It's because, like any industry, but it's because we're not just in the business of teaching martial arts. You're in the business of managing people. If you want to maximize success, you got to have staff. So we're in the business of being good at hiring. You're in the business of being good at managing. You're in the business of being good at training. You're in the business of being good at selling. You're in the business of being good at marketing. And the problem is most of us are just in the business of being good instructors, great instructors. That's not going to do it. That's not going to do it for you.
Right. Yep, 100%. You got to execute. That's the other big thing is you've got to execute, and that's what will help take you to the next level. But you're right. It's all those things, and that's where you need a team. And it can happen. It's hard work. There's no question. You said it, easier, right? It is hard work. There's no 2 ways about it. But hopefully that helped. Hopefully you guys got some ideas, and hopefully you take action on something, right? Wherever you're at, whatever level you're at, the key is take action.
Take another step forward. That's it.
Don't change if they don't change, right? So what got you to where you are is going to get you where you want to go. We hear that saying all the time, but there's a lot of truth in that.
Yes.
So,
all right, Tass. Well, thank you, my friend.
You as well. He was well.
Hey, don't mention it.
Don't itashimashite. That was
Thank you.
Japanese. Don't mention it.
Thank you, Taz.
Good, man.
Thank you, Mr. Walls. All
Yes,
right,
thank you.
Taz, I'll call you.
Yeah, do that. I've missed you. I haven't talked to you in a while.
I'll call you.
All right.
Bye, guys. Have a great one, everybody. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.